Hello everyone, I'm Michael Orwig, and welcome to the Wizard's Chest. With me today is my good friend Aazura, and we're going to be talking about near-death experiences, shifting all kinds of energy in ourselves, whether it's, you could say, simple belief structure, but there's so much more than just that. And your particular healing process is called Conscious Alchemy. And we'll talk about all of those and how so much of it helps people on their path in this enormous healing shift that everybody's going to. It doesn't have to be hard. And so many people, they're so stressed with the energies that are going on. It's a pretty challenging time for a lot of people, and your work and with your partner, Loris, does a lot of good for a lot of people. So let's start off by telling me a little bit about yourself and where a lot of your journey began.
Okay. Well, many years ago.
There I was.
When I was a single mom with 4 young children, I had a near-death experience. And while I was in the hospital prior to that experience, I knew something was terribly wrong and the doctors simply weren't picking up on it. And so I prayed a lot because I felt like I was going to die. I was feeling it for probably a week before. And I was praying. I prayed for 12 hours in the hospital saying, God, please let me stay and raise my children and I'll do your work. That's all I can remember doing for all those hours. And when I came out of surgery, I was so excited to see blood transfusions because I was actually still here. And I knew I was different almost immediately, and I couldn't explain that to anybody, but I knew things that I shouldn't know. I understood things that I didn't understand before. So there was a lot of new self-awareness and spiritual awakening, like many people have experienced from a near-death experience. I do not remember exactly what happened to me in between, but I knew very definitely that I had been permanently forever changed.
Now, how old were you about it? Your early 30s, late 20s?
That was my late 20s.
Late 20s, okay.
And I was just really excited to be here. However, what started to unfold was a knowing that my purpose was to aid in the upliftment of consciousness of humanity, which I had no idea what that meant at that time. But that was what I was told. And so I just, did my own journey around discovering what that was. About a year later, I was guided to a particular church on Long Island. And I was told that I was to go there before a service and to go there early in the morning. It was a Catholic church. I was raised Protestant, and I really didn't know what to do in the church, that particular church, because I knew there was a lot of ritual around it, and I wasn't clear about what that was. So I was very cautious. And I showed up at 7 in the morning. Of course, the cathedral was open. There was nobody there, as I was told, go when it was empty. And as I walked in the door, I heard this very gentle voice coming behind me that said, there's a live pink rose here for you. And I'm looking around, nobody there. And I went, oh, it's Jesus. I just knew. It felt like I could feel it. And so very hesitantly, I walked into the cathedral and I'm looking up and down all the pews. Of course, there's no pink rose. Thought I was crazy. You lost it, And I just went on and I was, saying giving my love to the church and to God. And I noticed off to the side, there was a meditation room with the candles where people would go in and do some prayers. And I walked in there, and as I went into the doorway into that little room, there was this beautiful life-size carved statue of Jesus. And he had his hands open and cupped, and resting in the palm of his hands was this beautiful live pink rose.
So live
pink rose. And that's what he told me I would get, a live pink rose. So I was stunned. And all I could do was cry because I felt like a miracle had just happened, And I sat down and I started to pray and give thanks. And I just kept asking him, you let me live. God let me live. What is it I'm here to do? And the strongest message was, you need to teach only love. You need to teach only love. And that was the beginning of this journey.
Excellent. So within that, you've studied a lot of different healing modalities over the years. Mm-hmm. You're currently in the process, as my wife had done, in getting a PhD in natural medicine from Quantum University. Yeah. So you worked a lot over the last couple of years with quantum understandings to go along with the healing work that you've done.
Correct.
Your current work is called
Conscious Alchemy Quantum Healing.
Conscious Alchemy, but you started way back when with hypnotherapy and many other modalities, didn't you?
Yeah, actually I started in 96. And the first thing that I learned was actually a transformational breathing technique. So I developed a system around that called Life Alchemy Breathwork. Then it went into hypnotherapy. I became a medical hypnotherapist, and I did that for about, a number of years as well, before Conscious Alchemy was actually brought forth to me in a vision while I was doing a healing session on a client.
Cool. Now we have both the same background in hypnotherapy, and a lot of good work can be done through hypnotherapy.
Absolutely, yes.
For many of us, and I saw this with my interview with Bob Beal, he was on a path that he described in his book, A Golden Path to Oneness. Mm-hmm. And consistently during this time frame of the path, they were releasing blockages.
Yeah.
And so much of all of our work is about, at some level, releasing the blockages to whatever extent we can. And I know the work we did 25 years ago isn't nearly as powerful as it is today. So without going through the full history of everything we've been doing, right, let's just talk about where it's at today and what you and your partner Loris are able to do today with Conscious Alchemy, the sacred geometries and everything else that's going on for people.
Okay. Well, it's our understanding that most of our conditioning happens in the first 7 years of our life. I wish I had known that when I was raising my children.
And then you go into the entire time when the child is in the womb.
Exactly.
And all of the programs from the pregnant mother are overlaid directly into the cellular memory.
Correct.
That's creating the baby, the fetus, and all of that. And I've had it actually heard described to me that one of the greatest gifts, some might question the gift part of it, is that the mother's self-image is overlaid into ours, good, bad, or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that because we choose our parents on a soul level, on the other side is spirit, prior to coming in, certainly that choice is all part of the dynamic and recognizing, yes, we know exactly where mom and dad are at, good, bad, or otherwise, wherever their challenges are and their good spots are. And, so it's fun. So within that, how does that play out with your stuff in the Conscious Alchemy?
Well, Conscious Alchemy Quantum Healing is certainly quantum work. And I don't really take credit for the healing itself. I really give that to a higher source. But Conscious Alchemy Quantum Healing is a system in which we literally can delete limiting or not life-enhancing programming beliefs that we carry subconsciously. It's like deleting a virus off of a computer, because a computer is all information, and basically our bodies, they say, we are 99.99% empty space. Hard to imagine that. But what's in that empty space? It's information, it's consciousness, it's the intelligence of creation. So when I was shown about this work and I started to understand more about consciousness, the clearings actually go beyond beliefs. In the clearings, what's happening is we're clearing patterns, programming, conditioning, perceptions, belief structures, codes, cellular memory, emotional trauma, physical trauma, mental trauma, spiritual trauma, and even any information that's in the DNA that certainly comes through our parents. Yes, the mom is part of it, but dad sure is too, right? And any information in the morphogenetic field or the energy blueprint of the physical body. So it seems to be addressing many, many different levels. And it's really wonderful for parents now to understand how much does get programmed into their children in those early years, because now there's things that we can do to start to change that just by our awareness alone.
So recognizing that we are this walking information system, what, and I know the answer to this, but I'll let you tell me, what do you think is what is the first thing you normally address as a belief structure that you guys like to work on with the current clients that come in through your door?
Foundational is a lack of self-love. And that is not because necessarily somebody blatantly said they didn't love them, but it's more the conditioning we have that keeps us in a state of fear, that shuts our heart down, that puts us into resistance, to life. And it also, all of these programs that are not life enhancing is what I call it, certainly impact our physical health, not just our mental body, our emotional body, and our physical body, and how we attract life to us. I pretty much see all that programming and all those conditionings as our attractor fields. We attract to us what we're in resonance with. And our subconscious mind is our predominant resonance system.
Yeah, it's what's in the field, not just what my conscious mind is thinking about. Is what is that energy that is emanating from my field, and that's what I'm creating from. But there's another aspect that when we think of archetypes, coming out of the non-physical dimensions into physicality for the first time, we created archetypes of victimhood and worthiness issues that go all the way back to the beginning of our physicality. So as you said, it's not just about this lifetime that Susie here had a mother that challenged her or abused her. No, this goes back for human consciousness all the way back to definitely. the beginning of our existence, even in physicality. And we're healing stuff not only for myself, but for the entire mass consciousness.
Yes, absolutely, because we are all connected and we are all one. We are not as separate as we perceive ourselves to be by any means. It is definitely an illusion. And, one of the things that I've noticed with the many people that I've been working with over the years is that when we clear at the level of clearing all these patterns out around lack of self-love, things change pretty quickly. All right. So when our subconscious patterns, it is a resonance field, but what I see happening, we've been very much focused on our thoughts, which is very important. But have you ever tried to just change your thinking? Okay. And affirmations, I think, are great. However, just doing affirmations used to agitate me because it was like chalk on a chalkboard with a lot of the things I was affirming, because I didn't know it at the time, but my subconscious was saying, no way, right? So what I have discovered is that really what's happening is life is coming to us through all of these conditionings and beliefs and programming that we carry subconsciously. Then we have a thought, and then we have a feeling, and then we have an action and a reaction. So when we're trying to change our feelings, trying to change our thinking, we can certainly make good progress with that, and meditation certainly helps. But the bottom line is, if the programming is still running, it's really hard to keep that
Here you have all of these filters, and it's like saying, I'm going to get a different image through my cameras over here without changing the filters. And I've got 5, 6, 7, 20, 30 filters in place. How is that image going to change if it's taking a picture through all of these, whether it's their personal conditioning, society conditioning, family conditioning, on down? It's a challenge, and we all start with where we are. But one of the things that I was drawn a lot to your early work in Conscious Alchemy is I saw it as much like a house of cards. Instead of just pulling the top cards off, you were able to get to a much deeper level and in essence pull the bottom card out and allowing the entire house of cards to
begin to fall.
And
Absolutely.
It's been a lot of interesting fun. Now, one of the things that you showed me early on in some of the sessions we did was our relationship energetically to source, to God, whatever, and how that was reflected with our relationship with our parents. In other words, you have this energetic relationship to our soul energy and to God and all of that. But no, it was being played out on a little more of a mundane level in the day-to-day, in the way our relationship was with our parents.
Well, our parents are our gods when we're little. We can't survive without, whoever it is that
we create a God image around our parents.
We do. And so it's really, really been so helpful for young parents to even do get as much of their own stuff out of the way first, because then they're going to be bringing through less of their trauma or pain or misunderstandings, because it's perceptions. We're going to perceive life through those lenses, right? And even though something very different than we are perceiving could be happening because it's coming through our filters, we don't know that. This is my reality. This is what's happening. This is what I expect. And the expectations that we hold is like radar. I expect to be judged, right? So what's happening? We're going to be really good at getting judged because we're expecting it. It's like radar, but we can literally clear patterns like that. Like, I expect to be judged. I'm not lovable. I'm not enough. And we all carry this stuff. So it's not like we're really all so connected. We have no idea. But the more that we clear, the more we're getting closer and closer to the true divine blueprint that we have come in with, which has never been changed. It's a state of really optimal perfection. And nobody ever told us that, right? That's still there.
Yeah.
It just gets overshadowed.
It's the truth of who we are.
It's the truth of who we are. And we really are incredibly unlimited beings. And our bodies know to heal and all this that goes on. But we forgot because we have and I call them shadow thoughts, are dropped down on top of this beautiful being of light that everyone is. And it kind of messes with us.
Big time.
Yeah, a lot.
One of the things we've talked about at different times is consciousness and many different aspects. And I know you have some very interesting opinions about that. Tell me about some of your understandings that you've come across in your work and everything that you do.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I have found very interesting, and it's only from doing so many sessions and seeing how all of this seems to interconnect, is that consciousness is very organized. It's very structured. It's divine intelligence, right? So of course it is. But I didn't know that in the beginning, I couldn't just clear, for instance, I resist going to school, let's say, okay? A child resists going to school. Can't just clear that and expect a big change, because there's a reason for the resistance. And if we can't clear the reason for the resistance, that pattern can't fully release. So it's like there's an architecture to it. And so I work at these deeper levels of identifying what is the initial causation for that belief structure or that resistance. And when we get that, then like the deck of cards can start to fall. So it's not like somebody says, I expect to be hurt in a relationship. They're resisting maybe being in a relationship. Okay, well, I can't just clear, I expect to be hurt in a relationship, because there's something under there that created that. The other thing is that in this work, I cannot clear anything that would leave somebody vulnerable. For instance, they're afraid, to be alone. Let's make something simple. And children often have that. They're afraid to be alone. And just to clear that alone is not necessarily a good idea from my perspective, from what I'm doing. We need to know why. Why are they afraid to be alone? Because otherwise I could clear that pattern, but they're still going to be afraid. But get to why. I think there's a monster under my bed. We'll clear the belief or the expectation more of that there's a monster under the bed. Then you can start working on the fear. Does that make sense?
It does. And I know in your group work, and you're expanding that more and more. And I'd like to even see you and Loris be able to do group healing through a video like this. We haven't quite created that yet, but you've been able to do group work.
Yes.
And within that, you'll go over 40, 50, 100 different thought forms around self-love.
Right.
In essence, kind of trying to, the way it seemed to me, casting a net to attempt to catch as many different possibilities that might be underlying that particular self-love or whatever the topic pattern is that that you're working with. Yeah. I know Laura. What's that?
And we have many.
And you have many. What's of the different protocols, which is what you guys call them, what's the one that you have the most number of thought forms tied to?
Oh boy, that's a big question, Mike.
Just ballparking.
Okay. I would say love.
How many pages do you have of different thought forms?
Well, and it's not thought forms, it's the program. It's the patterns. Okay. Yeah. So, we have lack of self-love, part 1, part 2.
But it's hundreds of them.
It's hundreds, yeah. And for every individual, and it's not like we just go by our documents, talk to the people, and really get a sense of where they're at and what was their history a little bit. They don't have to process with this work, but it does help me to know, give me a little bit of information in those first 7 years of your life, and then I can pretty much know where to go from there.
Now, one of the things I've studied that I found fascinating along the same lines was the mass consciousness effect. And I was initially introduced to it with Ho'oponopono. Yeah. And the particular story there is a doctor was in Hawaii and he worked in a psychiatric ward, and he didn't work directly with the clients. He reviewed files. He was PhD, reviewed files, and he would just spin within himself, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. Just the 4 thought forms over and over. And people started becoming healed. But he was spinning this energy within himself and recognizing that as part of the mass consciousness, if he was seeing aspects of these individuals in his field of view, that meant to him, and that's my understanding, that it is within us, and it comes back to the being connected to the whole. And it's very interesting for the oneness consciousness to recognize that if I do as much self-work as I possibly can, I'm in essence really doing it for all of humanity.
That's true.
And I know a lot of people love to say, or what can I do? You know, they've done their awakening and they're thinking I'm supposed to be out doing healing work or whatever. Well, your particular healing work may be just becoming the true self that you are, whatever that may be. And it's an interesting dynamic and all of that. Anything else? Where do you see this going so far for you? Or have you had the next set of understandings that they've given you as yet?
Well, the work continues to evolve. I don't think that's ever going to stop. Yeah, like I said, we're pretty complex beings. What I do know is that the more that we can get out of the way, in other words, a series of sessions to clear out as much as we can, and we do a lot in a session, the more of our true self is going to naturally come to the forefront. However, doing affirmations at that point, that are directly related to the patterns that we've cleared, flip it into a positive affirmation, that can start to anchor in. That can anchor in because there's nothing kicking it out saying that's not true. So we're really working more and more on identifying the collective patterning, but then also every individual has their own story. And so we personalize it as much as we can. And it's really an endless journey for all of us, right? But this is, if you're thinking about ascension, I think that it helps to speed up the healing of the heart, because we're getting rid of all this false information, false identity patterns that we're carrying that keep us from being who we really are, and that is love. Being love is who we really are. We were created that. And I've seen, it's hard to explain how many things I've seen, but one thing that's really important too, I think, that for us to understand now at this time on the planet, is these patterns that we hold, because our body is 99.99% empty space, and what's in there is consciousness, information. These patterns also, I truly believe, and I know there's research around it, that they are the initial precursor to any physical manifestation that we have, whether it's an accident, we break a leg, whether it's a disease that we have, those patterns, and there's lots of research on it. We work with that and identify the patterns that people are holding, even around a physical illness. Even something that happened maybe to them 25 years ago, those patterns are still there, even if the body has healed. We don't want them there, if they were the precursor to that disease.
So, what advice, we take yourself back to that young Aazura, late 20s, 4 young kids. What advice would you give her, knowing what you know now, in raising these kids to be as higher vibrational children, beings, young men and women? What would you be telling that young Aazura way back then?
Oh, a lot of things. It would be too long of a story. I think it's really, one of the things that I think is just basic is to understand that children take in, at those young years, everything as fact. It goes into the subconscious, and that is the way life is. So if they're constantly told, somebody says something to you like, what's wrong with you? Just do this. Or why can't you understand that? Or, things that can start to imprint, something's wrong with me. I'm not smart enough. Or, and the self-love comes from a lot of that kind of things that happen. Even though our parents loved us very much, that may not be the internal message they get. The other thing that's really, really important is that what they're observing, what they're watching, say a movie. If there's a lot of violence in the movie, we know that, as hypnotherapists and understanding the subconscious, we drop in from beta, which is us sitting here talking, beta brainwave, we drop into like alpha, theta when we're watching a movie, even when we're driving a car. which is interesting. We're
Daydreaming.
daydreaming, and somehow we get from point A to point B. It's miraculous, but we're on autodrive, right? But with children, if they're watching a scary movie, they've gone into these more hypnagogic states of consciousness, of brainwaves. That's dangerous.
They are fully immersed in that energy for the length of the movie, 2
And
hours,
it's
2.5 hours,
Exactly.
whatever,
Mhm.
and fully immersed in a full reality
Of that.
within the consciousness. That brings up all of the different violent video games. The
I
more real they have gotten, in my opinion, the more dangerous it has been.
I agree.
The quantum field does not discriminate.
No.
When take a game like Fortnite or any of them or whatever, they're deliberately addictive. The kids stay on them for an enormous amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's putting an energetic signature, right, wrong, good, bad, into the quantum field around that particular, whether it's a movie, a game, or whatever. And that, to me, I see tremendously problematic. But it's like the industry knows and is deliberately creating this
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get people to understand what's literally going on a quantum level
Mm-hmm.
with how that's manifesting for in essence, the military-industrial complexes.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get people to comprehend at that level.
Right.
They know there's problems going on in the mind of the child that from that addiction. But speak about the quantum level. I mean, do you see it the same way as I do within that?
Well, yeah, I see it as becoming, it becomes their inner reality. And, the scenes...
For a period of time.
For a period of time. And if they're repetitively witnessing violence, whether it's in the real world or on a movie, it's going to anchor in, certainly in these games, because they are definitely in a hypnagogic state. They're in an alpha or a theta brainwave, and it's anchoring in as fact. And that is what's so scary.
And it's done for hours at a time.
Hours at a time. And this is new entertainment for a lot of kids. There's nothing entertaining about it. It's horrifying.
It creates a disassociation
From reality.
From the true reality of a war scenario.
Right.
Oh, I'm not hurting anybody or whatever.
Right.
And no, the mind in hypnotherapy and a lot of the training, the way I've understood it, if I did a full visualization of golf, my golf swing, and I'm literally immersed in a scene, my neural network is firing all of the same neurons as if I was fully participating in the PGA Tour event. And
Yeah, it's in training.
it's a full entrainment. The
Right.
same neural net fires the whole bit. Well, obviously, it's not going to be any different if you're playing a particular game or watching a movie. Your neural net is building according to that particular energy signature, whatever you're
Exactly.
playing with.
Yes. Yeah. So we just have to be aware, with our children, with ourselves. Like my husband and I, Loris and I, do not go to violent movies. I don't watch them on TV. I don't go see them. I don't want that in my consciousness as, anticipating it. Because again, remember, anticipating, expecting, there's a certain energy that kind of calls it in. And the subconscious mind, at least from my perspective, is our attractor field. It is going to attract like resonance. Energy attracts like energy. And whether it's we expect to have our heart broken again because we went through a rough breakup in a relationship, or whether we expect to get hurt again because we have a terrible accident, these patterns can be cleared out, literally erased. The memory is still there, the understanding is still there, but it's not like a beacon say, hey, I'm expecting this again because it was so painful, I expect to be hurt again. We can actually change that level of our experience.
What about Big Pharma's programming through commercials of the different levels of fear just on the commercials? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I don't even...
I know you don't even watch them. We don't watch them.
But I really picked up on that probably about, I want to say about 12, 13 years ago. And it would be, back then it would be like put on the morning news, and every 2 minutes there was another, the flu season has started, and okay, you need to, and then they start selling drugs or whatever it was, and it was, it was horrific, to me at that time. It's like, I'm not even going to watch this because I'm actually getting entrained.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know better, it's still going in. And so we can become more discerning or make our own personal decisions on what we want to watch, period.
And like anything else, it's a whole lot easier to keep your field clean
Without that.
than trying to pull out all the programming after the fact. And that's a lot of the point that I'm mentioning here with the kids, is instead of giving them, how many kids do we see today at a restaurant that have some form of tablet out? They're playing at the dinner table in the restaurant. Mm-hmm. All and on and on and on. Now, that doesn't mean that they're watching something violent. I'm not saying that. But there still is that different conditioning that goes on, and recognizing it's a whole lot easier to maintain their vibration, their frequency high, than at age 20, all of a sudden, try to undo all of that.
It's a lot easier. And just the communication that they need, to be heard, when they're speaking and they're trying to have a conversation. They know if we're listening or not. They know. And to be heard is so important for all of us. Is just stop and listen and be present without our minds running, thinking about what we want to say next, But for children, if they know they're heard, that is huge. I think that is one of the greatest gifts we can give another person, is just to listen to them and really hear them.
And just as a conclusion, as we wrap up, one of my favorite pieces of advice I got from Spirit, basically about the kids and parenting, was none of us have raised fourth and fifth dimensional children in general. We're all new at this.
Yes.
Recognizing, I know that you're going to do the best that you can. Be prepared at any moment in time to be so present in the moment that you are ready and able to give up everything you thought you know about parenting and just be present in the moment, hearing them, being with them, and go with what feels right from that internal guidance, not from your programming.
Right, or reaction.
Exactly.
And the reaction comes from the programming.
But you can't do it unless you're present in the moment.
Right.
And at the same time, be willing to feel what your true self is telling you, instead of recognizing I'm just reacting from my past programming and all that entails.
And allowing these children to express their intuitive knowing.
Oh, that's huge.
And so, it used to be that, we were told we're just imagining things, or that's not real. And they know a whole lot more than we do sometimes.
Well,
it's a really good idea to listen to them. But these new children have a deep intuitive understanding of things and a knowing. And if that can be honored and recognized, oh my goodness, it's a big leap in our human evolution.
It is. And so with that, we're going to have to wrap up. But how can people get in touch with you if they'd like to do some healing sessions? You can do them over the phone. How would people get in touch with you, Aazura?
Yes, I can work remotely anywhere in the world. And it's Donna Aazura, but I go by Aazura. But I have a website. It's newhumanproject.com. And telephone connection would be 720-260-2445.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mike.
We'll talk again later.
Okay.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.